trim off here, there's some guidelines for you already. In fact, when I'm going to get rid of, you notice on a rack of spare ribs, if they cut it completely straight across, you'll end up with a couple of smaller bones at the very top of your meat. Well, we're going to get rid of that when we cut up and do our St. Louis style ribs. So what I'm going to look for here, first of all, is I have a line right here that kind of gives me a guideline. So right inside of this is where I'm going to trim this thing up along this, and you'll kind of feel where these bones come up and they spur off that way. So we'll get rid of that. We're also going to chop off this little point here so it kind of squares it up rectangle-wise. On the back side, there's two things I'm going to get rid of as well. I'm going to get rid of this flap right here, which is part of the diaphragm, and you'll notice right off of that there's a thick membrane. This membrane here is what we tend to equate to good fat and bad fat. We'll cover that in this section with brisket. But what it does, basically, it adheres to the meat to a point to where it does not allow the meat to loosen up. And it also prevents the smoke from penetrating the meat itself. So what I'm going to show you here is a secret that we learned. This is one of the many barbecue secrets that you're going to learn from 3GS Smokin whenever you take a class from us. It's literally a paper vice grip. So take a simple paper towel, utilize that.
Because if you try to grab this just with your fingers, it's slippery, it's slimy, you're going to end up cutting yourself.
You'll spend all day trying to get it off.
Yeah.
So what we do is I tell folks, I say, go in 2 bones, and utilizing the back side of the knife, the dull side, push down on the sharp side onto the bone, and lift that up, just kind of wedge it up. And I go in 2 bones, so I get a nice, easy release there. And then I take my paper vice grips here, and I go in underneath, and I just start pulling off that top membrane, and I literally just pull that whole membrane off.
Cool.
The thickness of that and the tightness of that, you may go to a restaurant in town where you're eating some spare ribs, and you're like, what is this? It's nothing wrong. The meat does not want to pull away from it. Well, it's this right here that it's adhering to. So
there's something wrong with me because I've had ribs with that silver skin left on, and I like to just rip it off and eat it. There's usually a lot of good flavor there, but that's just me.
I'll actually show you what we do. So when we get rid of this flap here, the flap is actually going to keep it on there. I go ahead and keep that on there, but there's something that we'll show you here as we get done with this.
Okay.
But you take and use this, just throw that on your smoker. Now, this is the flap, it still has that silver skin on it, but you take that and put it on there. When you're done cooking with it, it'll literally just pull off in one piece.
Huh.
Okay, and then what you're left with is a really nice piece of smoked meat. It's got really nice marbling in it, so it chops up really nice. So when you get in and you start chopping it up, it crumbles up, and you've got this really nice pink smoked meat that you just crumble right on top of your beans. So we do that. So now we're going to get here, we're going to start trimming this thing up. Now, some ribs that you'll get may have a lot of fat left underneath that the membrane. Go ahead and scrape that off. We're going to flip this thing over. The butcher was kind enough to already get rid of the breastbone there, but I'll give you a point here. You'll notice that there are some knuckles here. You can notice this right here. That's kind of where you'll start feeling underneath the bone. You'll feel, okay, that's where the bone actually stops, and I can start feeling it get in. That's where you're going to want to go ahead and cut that separately. Now for this part here, I'm utilizing the guideline of that one piece of fat that was along the edge there, and it just runs perpendicular to the bone. So I'm just going to take that, again, nice sharp knife. And I'm already getting ready to see I'm starting to spread it up. Now this is another piece that you can go ahead and put on the smoker. These are the things that you kind of, well, gosh, I've been cooking this for 3-4 hours. I'm getting kind of hungry, so I like to have these sitting around.
And now, isn't that, if you cut that up where those bones are, isn't that like if you go into Applebee's and get riblets?
Yes.
Isn't that actually what that is?
Yeah. It's almost like your McRib sandwich.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I don't even think that's really pork. I think that's kind of like Taco Bell's meat. But anyway. So then we're going to finish this off by squaring it up. As you can see, there's a little point out on the end here, and there's really, in a competition or for, again, presentation purposes, there's really not a whole lot down here. This is going to dry out really fast on you. This tends to be extremely thin, as you can see here. There's not a whole lot there. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go in, I'm going to find the last rib that's there, and I'm going to cut right along the edge of that rib because I want as much meat on the outside of that rib as possible. And that's a St. Louis style rack of ribs for you right there.
There you go.
Okay.